cop who quit instead of helping to gentrify Atlanta. Man, oh man. Now, this is a read-arena right here. Run through it with me, okay? 3 years in, I had basically arrived. I'd been transferred to the day shift. It was the premier shift. You wanted to get the day shift because those are the best hours, good days off. On the beat, they started telling me, we really want you to start policing this section of Boulevard and Ponce de Leon Avenue, basically the Belford Pines apartments. We think there are dope boys there. That's not good. When police say dope boys, they're not saying they're dope, you know. It's not good. We think there's a lot of illegal activity happening. We want to really focus there, so we're going to put up signs that say you can't park on the street. I want you to go and write tickets on every single car that's on the street, and I want you to get those cars out of there. If they don't move, tow them. I want you to start running checks on everyone standing on the street. If they have got warrants, I want you to lock them up. Running checks on everyone standing on the street. It became this very aggressive policing strategy in Bedford Pines, which was strange because it was extremely rare for them to tell you to do anything. It's unusual for them to give you very specific directions and then for them to be very serious about it and follow up. I'd have supervisors show up and say, hey, I drove by, there were some cars parked out there, did you ticket them? It made me very curious. So in my own time, I live in Atlanta, I live in the zone I policed, which is super rare, I drove over there and had a conversation with some people. I was like, hey, this is what I'm being asked to do. Why do you think that is? What's going on? A homeowner in the area was very frank with me. He said the guys who own Belford Pines got their tax bill last year, and their taxes were assessed based on all the gentrification happening in the area. So they wanted to move everyone out of these apartments and knock them down and rebuild these nice, expensive apartments, and the government said no. And so then they said, well, that's okay, we'll just increase the rent. And they tried to increase the rent, and the Section 8 guys came back out and said, no, you can't do that either. The only way you can evict or do anything like that is if the person who owns the apartment is convicted of a felony. So the Bedford Pines guys just went to the police department and said, we want you to police in here. We're going to give you a section of Belford Pines to actually have office space. And I want you to lock as many people as possible up to make these apartments vacant so we can knock them down. Now, what fucking level of dystopian-ass fucking cyberpunk future bullshit is it where apartment managers can just tell cops to start arresting, just fucking arrest our tenants, you know, so they can make more money off of the rent? Remember, this is what lefties mean when they say police serve capital. This is what they mean when they say that. They don't mean, the police has to defend property, because of course they do, obviously. What they mean is the police are ultimately subservient to the interests of wealth. That everything the police do, all the actions they take, are oriented around a broader political agenda of prioritizing the interests of landowners, of business owners, whatever, over your average person. And what level of dystopia is this bullshit? Fuck it, just ticket every car in the street and run the papers on every person you see just standing on the sidewalk, and the police just went with it. The police just complied like dogs. They were just like, yeah, we'll just do that. We don't get anything out of it, by the way. The police don't get, the police officers aren't getting like more pay from this. They just do it. They just naturally do it. They see an opportunity to ruin people's lives. And they're just like, oh yeah, naturally, thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in this person's misery. I go to my supervisors. Is this what the case is? And they looked at me like, what are you, stupid? Of course, why else would we be doing this? This is what people mean by ACAB. You know, the full saying is, a few rotten apples spoil the whole bunch. If the system is this fucking broken, an individual good police officer's merits are worth nothing. This cop, the one who provided this information, quit the force. That's what good cops do. They quit the force. But before that cop was made aware of the plan here, he was a complicit agent in this unconstitutional effort to prioritize the interests of wealth over the interests of citizens. I bet, you know why he wasn't told, by the way? I bet you it's one of two reasons. Either because the other cops felt it was so obvious they didn't need to say it, or because they had a feeling this cop was one of the good ones. So they didn't want to be as open about all the nefarious shit police departments get up to. So they just have him do it, and they won't deny it when it's brought to their attention. They'll accept it, of course, naturally. And the implicit follow-up to that is, what are you going to do about it? I'm not a constitutional lawyer. That's not my bag. I'm not even a political activist. But something about that smacks of institutional racism, right? I mean, there wasn't a white person in the whole complex. Most of the renters were single black girls who were probably just trying to, make their way in the world. And yes, their boyfriends probably were dope boys and were up to no good or whatever, but they've been doing the same thing forever and would continue to do the same thing forever. I don't know what the problem was, except now there's a multi-million-dollar skyrise next to them. Criminality is a civic issue. But to the police, the only real crime started to take place when somebody could have made more money from the absence of these drug runners. There was something about that made me think, now when I clock into work, I'm not doing any good. I'm actually doing harm. It wasn't long before the riots started. I started making noise right then. I was already pretty vocal about the fact that I wouldn't lock people up for minor drug stuff. I didn't feel great about ruining somebody's life over a dime bag of weed or whatever, so I just started trying to find a way to exit stage right. It dawned on me that the entire system, the entire thing was a shitty mafia system. If you tried to do a good job and say, I'm going to be a good cop and I'm going to obey commands, they would abandon you, charge you, leave you behind, and not even think twice. And if you didn't obey the rules, then they were going to charge you for that. And if you tried to remain quiet or do your job, you're going to be a piece of modern-day redlining that way too. There was no way that I could exist and feel good about it. Because I didn't have to, and because that's the privilege part, I just decided not to. When I told the department I was quitting, they said, good for you. If I could quit, I would quit. My supervisor literally said, can we get together after work and you tell me what else I can do? I don't know what else to do, and I cannot stomach being here. That's an interesting line. I haven't read this article prior, so I didn't expect that at the end of this paragraph. What does that mean? Let's do some literary comprehension here. Just following orders? Perhaps? The thing is, most people who do bad things do feel themselves victims in a system that is forcing them to do said bad things. This cop, the supervisor, probably recognizes that there are bad things the department's doing, and he's tired and worn down and doesn't give a shit enough to actually stop it or oppose the broader systems and interests because he has a supervisor who will attack him if he doesn't go through with this, and so on and so forth. Do you think they ever thought to think of the drug runners that way? If cops, who get paid pretty damn well, who enjoy a lot of social privilege, can be slumped there at their desk thinking, damn, I'm not doing a good thing, and I'd do anything else if I could, but I can't, so I won't. And they can think that about themselves. Isn't it a little weird they can't think the same thing about them drug runners? Because fuck me, everything they just said goes 20 times over. Actually, not even, because drug runners probably want to be a drug runner a tenth as much as cops want to be cops, but cops do way the hell more harm than your average little fucking drug runner does. The damage done to inner cities through the running of weed from point to point is infinitesimal compared to the systemic damage that has been done through the use of the police as a militant force designed to uphold the interests of capital and white supremacy. It is incomparable. It is not even close, the damage that is done, respectively. It wouldn't even register on a map. It's like that old graph. They say here's all the theft that happens in the United States, and it's like a thin pie slice out of the wheel. Here's all the wage theft that happens, and it's like 2/3 of the wheel. If you take all the theft that goes on in the United States of America, all the theft, burglary, larceny, whatever, pile it all together, take a monetary value of it, it pales in comparison to wage theft. Simple stuff. Not paying overtime, not allotting hours correctly, underpaying under the table. Stochastic crime, blue-collar crime, is very visible to us. It is broadcast every single day in every institution our media can throw at us, okay? The police talk about it. The media talks about it. The president talks about it. The Senate and the House both talk about it. The Supreme Court adjudicates it. But real harm, real damage, is invisible and immense. And it is white-collar crime. It is crime which is... Holy shit, can you imagine, like, how much damage was done to the economy through the 2008 financial crisis? Can you even begin to fathom how many of those people are in jail now? It's not even... These are worlds apart. But we are spending fucking 10 to 20% of our city budgets on police departments. And the people who raped the planet run free. This is what I say. If you really want a law and order political candidate, vote for a socialist. If you actually want law and order in our streets, don't just stop with the fucking dime bag runners. Don't stop with the people who fucking dent their car and run off because they didn't have insurance. That's not where crime ends. That's the fucking skim at the top of crime. That's the fucking thin, that's the chaff at the top of the crime. That's the pudding skin. The real crime, the actual crime, is immense and material and all around us. And the only people who give a fuck about it at any point in time are people who are aware of the crimes of capital. After talking with Mother Jones, Gisler relocated from Atlanta following what he believes to have been a retaliation for quitting. He explains the situation in a subsequent message. A report was made to the Division of Family and Children's Services alleging abuse in my household. Also, an allegation of animal abuse was made. Both allegations are very serious for anyone, but especially as law enforcement because you cannot operate while under investigation. The presumption is whoever filed the report assumed I was going to stay in law enforcement, and the effect would be terror and hardship. DFACS was very cooperative and was able to immediately see the allegations were unfounded and complained about wasted resources. It was a shot across the bow meant to communicate that I shouldn't be noisy while exiting. Our wife was especially blindsided by the ordeal and was truly terrified. Our leaving was necessary simply to insulate ourselves from such hijinks by distancing ourselves geographically. Currently, APD is filing random charges and administrative punishments around the department to discourage the hemorrhages in staffing. It has worked and people are quieting and hiding. It effectively stops officers from transferring or retiring if they are under investigation. Fortunately for me, there is little they can do outside of this sort of thing or something very dumb like attempting to physically harm me, which would be much harder now. That's too dramatic to even consider. You know, there's a name for the type of organization that says if you ever speak out against us after you leave, we'll threaten you. There's a name for the type of organization that tries to prevent people from leaving by threats of violence, by silencing, and by an intimidation. And it is the fucking mafia. This is mafia. The cops are a gang. They're a gang in the commission of the state, but they are a gang nonetheless. They operate identically to a mafia. Identically. Nothing has changed. The origins of the police were literally those of private military forces that operated at the behest of city governance that were later institutionalized and standardized, and now every city has its own police department. But it used to be a mayor would just have like a couple dozen guys. That used to be the way it worked. And there was no real functional difference between the police and the mob in a given town. Just one of them had the backing of the local, political leadership, and one of them had the backing of, leaders in crime syndicates. But apart from that, they were just competing interests. Of course, now they've been institutionalized a little bit, and now they cooperate directly with judges and DAs and what have you, but their origins ring through any time any misbehavior on the part of the police is found, which is insane. We just let this happen. Freedom-loving conservatives defend this, by the way. Yeah. That is why people say ACAB, by the way. It's very, very difficult, I think, to take a systemic look at the nature of the police in this country, their respective ineffectiveness, the damage they do to the community, their blatant graft, corruption, violation of the law, their inability to adhere to the constitutional values they're meant to uphold, the fact that they operate like a fucking private mafia sometimes, the fact that they are reflexively internally defensive and never accept any form of outside scrutiny, the fact that they're a bunch of fucking crybaby pussies. Hey, you know, just recently, Seattle cut the budget of their police department by 5%. You know what the police did? They had a little protest at like fucking 1 a.m, running their sirens in a residential neighborhood to cry about it. All their cars blaring their sirens, 110 decibels, just keeping everyone awake. All the babies, all the people who got to work in the morning, because they're, how dare you? You can't take our money. Can you imagine if teachers acted that way? Teachers who get their budgets cut every fucking year. Can you imagine if they, not just their budgets, their salaries sometimes too. Can you imagine? 5% budget cut. 5% budget cut. They cry about it, these pussies. Even in the most progressive cities, even in cities like Seattle, New York, whatever, Portland's largely progressive, even Oregon's a shithole. The police are still terrible. The New York City Police Department is terrible. After Eric Garner died, they all did a protest. They printed out shirts saying, "I can breathe," mocking his dying words. The Seattle PD don't give a fuck about the democratic will of their citizenry, will cry and bitch and keep ordinary folks up with their fucking sirens blaring, hoping that the citizenry will blame the budget cuts rather than the actual police. LAPD has always been garbage. This is all over the place. The idea that the police just need better training and like a couple policy changes, it's not enough. Not even close. The closest thing that we could do to preserving the institution of the police as a transitionary step while actually ethically dealing with the problems they currently have is third-party oversight for every major police department in the country, along with a complete reworking of how DAs get their information and their cases handed to them. And in addition to that, a complete purge of police departments. Get them the fuck out of there. Sorry, you fucked it up. These are top to bottom broken institutions, okay? Get them out, train in new folks, bring them in, okay? Keep a couple of vets, have them train the replacements, then get the fuck out of here, okay? You can even get a salary pension, okay? Get a nice fat pension. I don't care. Just fuck off. Quit ruining the cities you're squatting in. Yeah, a fresh install. That's what you need to do. I don't care. In fact, I would happily pay more in taxes if it meant that the additional money I am paying could go towards the pensions of cops so they will shut the fuck up and let other people do their work for them. I will happily divest more of my personal tax payments towards that cause specifically, okay? And they can spend the rest of their life beating their wife and sitting in a fucking reclining leather chair watching Fox News in a tank top, okay? They can spend the rest of their life like that, okay? They never have to see a black person again. They never have to see a black person again. Yeah, I will pay you $100 to fuck off, essentially, yeah.